Hello YouTube, I'm David, otherwise known as Recycled Mana, and what I'd like to do is pose a couple questions for atheists. I like to have debate, I don't like to argue, and what I mean by that is the fact that I see a lot of arguments of, oh, well, you misspelled this, so your entire argument's gone, I just want to argue about the fact that you can't spell correctly. I apologize if I misspell something, or if I mispronounce something. I'm also slightly sick, so if I cough or sneeze or what have you, I don't think that makes anything I say wrong, but just want to cover my bases. So anyways, the first question I have is very simple, but I feel is actually rather potent. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I know that sounds stupid because it's so simple, but in reality, when you look at it, it's a very basic argument, which is, if the chicken came first, then how did it come up to being? Because something had to raise it. In which case, it had to come from an egg, which came from another chicken, which had to come from an egg, which came from another chicken, and you have this repeated cycle. So, you bring in evolution, which is the only way you can really do that, because chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg is a repeating circle cycle. And so that makes a circular argument, which isn't what I'm trying to do. I actually want to try to avoid those as much as I can, because I see people bombing those all over the place, that if you make one circle argument, all of a sudden everything that you had, fact or not, is thrown out the window. So one thing I've noticed is there's two differences. There's microevolution and there's macroevolution. Microevolution being something like a red bird suddenly taking brown tips to its feathers, and these brown tips allow that bird to live easier and breed easier, and so all of a sudden this new type of bird goes out and breeds and becomes more dominant and may even make the other species extinct. So it evolved. But it's not too much of a difference. It's a genetic mutation that caused it to live a little easier, but it didn't choose to do that. It was just something that happened to happen. Macroevolution is what I do have a problem with, which is something of the argument that one genus can change into another genus. That is to say, something of like, there's chimps to humans, which I know is not what the actual evolutionists believe. It's something more of like ape-like men becoming men. But then where did the ape-like men come from? You repeat this process. Now, you can take it as far back as you want, but eventually man had to come from somewhere. And so, you got man, and you've got all these stages of, Homo erectus, and then Homo this, excusing the pun there. But eventually, you have to reach an endpoint. And when you do, all these things had to evolve, and so where did the chicken come from? If it wasn't created, by an actual, creator, then it had to, come from something else. And so far as I can see, science's explanation for that is that it had to evolve from somewhere else. Well, the problem with that is if it did evolve from somewhere else, then you keep evolving backwards and backwards and backwards until eventually you are stuck with a problem, which is you have your one-celled organism that had to come into being. That is, it had to have non-life become life. So the one-celled organism is, it's living. And I can take this one-celled organism, put it in a test tube, and pierce it. Now, and you have the test tube with everything you need, all the right salts and proteins and everything else that needs to be right, the salinity and alkalinity and all that. And so now you have that pierced cell, which will then spew forth all its little bits and break through its little shell. So now you've got all the parts of a living cell. And you've got everything that a cell needs to live in. But yet, there is nobody on this planet that could make that cell reconstructed. You can't put that cell back together again. It's literally a Humpty Dumpty problem. you can't put the cell back together again. So how, with all of the right things in there, the actual cell's parts all there, how, if you can't make that, with everything that it takes to make a living cell into a living cell, how can you expect this random explosion to suddenly create life? Or, further down, some say the Big Bang makes, all the little gases and everything else, and then somewhere along there, in a pool of water somewhere, life was made. But it doesn't work. So, anyways, please feel free to post your comments. Don't rate or subscribe or any of that. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in actually talking, because I want facts, and I want to hear your replies, because it does actually mean something to me. If there is something you have that I hadn't thought about, I'd like to know it. It's certainly within the realm of possibility that there's an argument I haven't heard on this yet. So anyways, thank you, please reply, and yeah.